Hey there, ladies and gents. Welcome back to the Red Band Cast here on the Red Band Cast YouTube channel, or Resurrection Reviews, or whatever it is. I'm still confused about what I'm going to do with this. Doesn't matter. Anyhow, you recently saw, if you're watching the channel, the new video I just put up of me walking around my house, stumbling around, and making coffee, and about to eat eggs, and talking to you, and stuff like that. Well, what was going on, really quick, sip of that coffee. What was going on was I'm starting this new series. As you heard, it's going to be the 100 greatest action movies according to the internet. Now, when I say according to the internet, and when I say action movies, there's specific things I want to talk about. According to the internet, these are the 100 greatest from 1968 to 1999. I call them classic action movies because that's sort of the period before this sort of postmodern action movie that sort of starts with The Matrix and continues on into the next millennia. And I want to kind of end with The Matrix. That's kind of my plan. I might not end the series of reviews of The Matrix, but The Matrix is kind of the last of this breed of classic action movies. I'm going, like I said, from 1968 to 1999. And this is sourced from 3 different sources. First, Google. All I did is I just typed in greatest action movies, or greatest action films, something like that. And I came up with, you know what the heading, if you search something like that, Google gives you just a bunch of examples of classic action movies that you can put down as maybe some of the best. For Google, this started out with Die Hard and ended, I think, with like Commando or something like that. And so I just went ahead and wrote down 1 to however many there were of the movies that were 1968 to 1999 on that little Google thing. I wrote all of them down, and those were numbers 1 through, I think it was like 19 or 20 or something like that. It might have been as high as 30. Anyway, that, and then I went to Ranker, which was the first result on Google, and then I sourced a lot of other movies from there until they got to their number 100. And then I sourced a lot more from the IMDb top 250 action movies. And like I said, just 1968 to 1999, I've got a list sort of in sequential order of when I saw them presented on the page, that is, of the 100 greatest action movies according to the internet. Well, I'm going to do this video series starting off with RoboCop, and I'll get to that in a minute. But first, I wanted to go ahead and just sort of talk about why I want to do action movies in particular, besides the fact that I'm just sort of in the mood to do action movies. By the way, great action here, Star Wars. That's considered an action movie in this list. Not all of these, by the way, I think really are action movies. Some of them are not. Some of them are just westerns or sci-fi that incorporate action elements, but I included them on the list because it's according to the internet. I love this cup. Got it from Disney World. Speaking of Disney World. And this is a really, really great mug filled with really, really good, well, I think good coffee, which is some Starbucks decaffeinated whole bean that I ground up here at home, and then also mixed a little bit with caffeinated Maxwell House. I think it tastes pretty good. I got some milk in there too. Anyhow, back to the action movies. Sorry for that digression. The reason I want to do action movies is that I think action movies right now are something I'm interested in because of their commentary on manhood. And I'll be talking about manhood throughout this series. I think a lot of the time action movies are considered to be the man's type of movie. It is a manly, it's a manly genre for men, by men usually, starring men, about men, and they talk about manhood in these movies generally. Some of them I would say more than others, but I think it's important for a great action movie, a truly great action movie, to talk about manhood and have a philosophy of manhood, even if it's not one that I necessarily agree with. It should have a philosophy of manhood. And, for instance, RoboCop is one that I think has less of a philosophy of manhood and more of a philosophy of material, which is sort of getting into philosophy at large and stuff like that. And I don't want to go too deep into that in these series, but I do want to talk about manhood as it relates to these action heroes and how that affects us as men in the real world. And you might be a woman watching this, and this is by no means a source of finding out what a man's supposed to be or anything like that. This is just my opinions, not opinions, but my impressions of what these movies are saying about men and manhood and what a man should be, just through movies, through people shooting each other, kind of. Action movies, I think, can be deep. For instance, I think Dirty Harry is a fairly deep movie, despite the fact that there's a lot of people who would say that it's just about vigilantism and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of deep stuff in Dirty Harry. I would say even Die Hard has some fairly interesting themes we can play with, and the Terminator 2 definitely has a level that we could talk about there. Anyway, though, that's sort of the reason I want to talk about action movies. This video is actually going fairly long, so I think I will upload this separately from the RoboCop review. So, just wanted to let you know, just kind of more about this series, and I'll review RoboCop here in just a minute. I've got my notes already. I've taken extensive notes. One other thing I want to mention before I leave is that there's kind of going to be a few factors that I specifically focus on in here, and this is stuff that makes it both a fun action movie and a really good action movie. So, for instance, I've got body count, which is always important in an action movie. There have to be people either getting killed or hurt in some way. Body count specifically relates to people getting killed, and I include off-screen deaths that are just mentioned, as well as on-screen deaths. For instance, RoboCop has a high volume of deaths here. I think there's something like probably close to 20 to 25 on-screen deaths, or deaths in which he shoots and it's at least implied that somebody dies. But there's also a ton more as far as just deaths that they mention, like in those newscasts and stuff. Another thing is nakedness. A lot of people like nudity in their action movies. I don't. It's a personal choice, but also I think nudity detracts from a lot of the themes of action movies and gets away from the man versus the good man versus the evil man kind of mentality, and puts us into a different realm of either romance or temptation of that man. And sometimes that can be useful, sometimes it can't. But nakedness is an important thing that I need to count on this list. I haven't encountered one yet. I've reviewed 2 completely, as far as just a written review. And neither of them have had zero nakedness, just to let you know. Car chases. Car chases are important. I love car chases in movies. Car chases are fun, and they can really show a good directing style and a good style of editing and cinematography. Training montages, just something that I enjoy, and I think everybody enjoys in their action movies. They like people to train. Neither of the ones that I've done have had training montages yet. Fist fights. Fist fights are important to show not only physical strength, but emotion in some ways. How much do you hate the guy? It depends on how hard you punch him, how far he flies back, stuff like that. For instance, RoboCop has 3 fist fights. Bullet slingers. That's just any scene where a gun is fired in any kind of substantial way. Anytime where a gun is featured. Guns are important because guns are an extension of the man's will. It's interesting and kind of cool. Unique fights / weapons. Really cool stuff that can sort of go towards prop design or special effects. Acting is important. Directing is important. Effects are important. Cinematography is important. Editing, writing, and then I have other elements and rewatchability. These are both things that I really take into account. Other elements include music or soundtrack. I also just sort of random notes. Rewatchability is important because I think a great action movie you should be able to watch at least once every 2 or 3 years and get a ton of enjoyment out of it. And then I also have overall, which is just sort of my overall opinions on the movie, and then I have a section just called On Manhood, and just sort of the movie's philosophy of manhood, how much it has a philosophy, how much it doesn't, and how much manliness really is in the movie. And I go further as far as manliness than just, you know, sort of stereotypical manliness. I go as far as really what manliness should be. And I'll just kind of leave it there. This has been a very long video. It's a very long explanation, but I think this is going to be an interesting series. You don't have to watch this video if you don't want to. RoboCop is coming up next. Rock on. If you like, subscribe. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.